And we're live, so happy Wonder Wednesday, everyone. I hope that I'm finding you well, whether you're watching us now live across our social media platforms or whether you'll be watching this video in the future. And I'm super excited today because it's our first Wonder Wednesday, and officially we are kicking off our summer camp, which is something we've never done before. We've never had a summer camp here at Floxies, but we have decided that acquiring some skills like fundamental skills like HTML and CSS is crucial if you want to stand out as a designer and as a Webflow developer as well. And so with that in mind, we invited our expert speaker today, Ailin Tobin, who's an amazing Webflow developer, to come and teach us the fundamental skills that we need so badly. And so without further ado, let me get into our gather town. Let me know who's watching us here. Drop a message in the chat. I love to see, our audience interacting with us. So at any point throughout our presentation today, throughout our event, make sure and feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat, because I'll be checking them out, whether it's on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. All right, let's get into our metaverse and let's make sure that I'm not in the way. Awesome. And here we go.
I think Claudia's going to explain.
Hi. Oh wow, lots of people. I love it. I'm only like gone for a minute, and then when I come back, there's like everyone coming in. I love that. Love that so much. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our Wonder Wednesday. I was just introducing the event to our audience, and I was just saying how happy I am to kick off our very first Floxies Summer Camp, which is something that we've never had in the past. But when the summer arrives, we're all kind of like I don't know, kind of low energy. We don't know, like we had a full year at our back. Like we've done so much, we've learned so much that it's like, okay, what else can we do? Like all I want to have is a holiday right now, just enjoy a nice spritz on a sunny beach. And so I thought, you know what? Instead of just like keeping our heads down onto something really, really heavy or just some kind of event that doesn't really relate to what we've been doing, I thought that, what's a better occasion than to really grasp the fundamental skills for us and, set us off as a better designer in September when we're back at it. And so HTML and CSS, we were having this chat with Ailin here, our guest speaker, our expert. We were just saying how important it is to master these skills and how sometimes people underestimate the importance of having these skills in the first place as a designer, as a developer. If you really want to stand out, or if you really want to understand the structure and how to improve your work, these are the fundamentals, right? And so Ailin, maybe I'm going to let you explain a little bit better, or why is it so important to master HTML and CSS? Obviously you're an expert developer and you're so knowledgeable about this topic, and we're so lucky to have you here for 4 events up ahead. So I'll leave the floor to you.
Thanks, Claudia, and yeah, and thanks very much for having me. I suppose I'll just give a little background. I'm a Webflow developer based in Ireland. I was the first Webflow Webflow partner official expert to come out of Ireland. And my background is front-end development more than design. So in the Webflow space, I get lots and lots of design envy because there are so many amazing designers out there. And sometimes I see that there is amazing designs with not so amazing HTML and CSS structures. And that's, so my focus is building fast, responsive, high-performing websites when I get amazing designs off amazing developers. So I came across Webflow actually trying to solve a problem. I think the problem that I was trying to solve was a mega menu, and I found it was either a Pixel Geek or a Flux video on how to do it, and I built it in Webflow, exported the code, and added it to the front end project that I was doing, and no one on my team realized. So that's when I was like, this tool is amazing. And it was faster than what I could do. And it was, yeah, it was, I was really impressed with how clean the code was that was exported and the file structures and everything. So then I moved pretty much straight away all in on Webflow, and all I'm doing now is developing on Webflow and starting to move into using Webflow as a front end for app development. So yeah, that's just a bit of a roundabout small bio about myself. So yeah, so this next 4 classes, I'm just going to focus on Webflow, HTML, and CSS. We're not going to see a lot of amazing designs, but we'll hopefully see some good, learn a bit more about Webflow, HTML, and CSS. And yeah, I'll do 30 minutes of teaching, and then we'll leave it open to the floor and see what questions people have, and hopefully, yeah, build out some, or learn some fun stuff.
Amazing. And thank you so much once again, for this opportunity. It's so important. And I can see from the chat as well, like Maria is saying, I found Webflow trying to fix a navbar, LOL. And Andrea says I did the same for my past job. Gabrielle, I found Webflow through a friend who mentioned it in a conversation. Big shout out to my friend. Big shout out to Gabrielle's friend. Best decision ever. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Ailin. Let's get to it.
Okay, so I just share the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And okay. Okay, so as I was saying, that this is just going to focus on Webflow, HTML, and CSS. So the way I look at the Webflow designer, I look at it in 2 parts that we have over here. This I imagine as HTML, because these are all different HTML elements, essentially. And over here is I see a visual representation of CSS and how we can, instead of writing CSS code, we use this side, this bar over here, this side here, to create our CSS. So we'll just start. Well, I suppose I'll just start talking about what is CSS. So it's a cascading style sheet, and what it does is when we have, I'm just going to start off with, I've got a heading here. So this heading here is a H1 element. And it's actually a semantic HTML tag that looks like this when we inspect the code. And in that when we have our semantic HTML tag, we're going to put in a class. And we're going to just call this class equals heading. So if I was to write this code, it would be something like this, and we would close our H1. Oh, that doesn't really work.
Obviously.
It would look something like that. So I'm now going to, in Webflow, how we would do this is we would go over here and we would type in heading. Now what we've got here is we've got this, we've a visual representation of this particular, this here. And we can see as we go down, we've got all these different options. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll just look at the size. So we've got a size here called 4REM, and that's actually connected to the H1 tag. And now what's the difference between the H1 tag and this heading is, if I go up here, and we go back to all H1 headings, this style is set on all of the semantic H1 headings. Now this can be overridden by using this class heading, and we're going to change this to 2. Maybe just for this, we'll change to 8. 6. And we're going to give it a color of red. Change that back to 2 so that's easier for people to see. Now, what we're after doing with this class equals heading is we're after overriding any style or anything that is a parent of this, of this particular tag. So the H1 tag is a parent. And if you think of things in terms of, we'll do, I'll duplicate this. We've got our parent. And then underneath the parent, we've got a child. So anything that is underneath this heading, this style will take the properties, take the style of this H1 heading. So that's why when the H1, the semantic H1 that we have here, it's got a style. You can see there it's got a style, a size of 4 rem and a color of this kind of black color and a line height. Now we can do a few other little things with this. You know, once we've got this in here, we can customize our fonts, and we can customize, you know, there's multiple different things, all these fun things that we can do down here. We can add drop shadows and all this kind of stuff, but we'll keep it simple for the moment. Now, why is this important? Is that if we have this heading, we've just called it heading, we can create a we can add in another piece. Let's say we're going to add in a piece of text down here. And we can add the same heading tag to it. And now we've adopted the properties that we have up here. But there's one little difference. If you can see that this is bold and this has got a different font weight. And I'm just going to publish this and show when we and we're going to inspect this and see what's going on here. So you can see that we have our H1 class heading, and down here we've got our font. So I'm going to inspect this. We're going to go through here. We've got our H1 with our heading, and we're going to, we found our class here, and all that the class is manipulating is the color and the font size. But you can see here that there's a font weight that is attached to the H1 tag. So this tag is a semantic tag, a semantic H1 tag that has a style attached to it. So this is something that I see sometimes in Webflow, that people they don't know how to manipulate this or fix this because they see it visually. That visually they have created this visual class, and they don't understand why these two things have changed. But the mistake, if you can see here, not the mistake, but the thing that I haven't updated is if I click on this H1, you can see that the weight here is bold, and this weight here is down to normal. So in order to manipulate, to make sure that this class is working correctly, then we would have to go down here, update that to bold, or we could change it to black, whichever. And now the classes are the same, exactly the same throughout. But we've also got the same issue here with the height, because we're taking the height from the H1, so perhaps we would change that to 2. And it's now that class now should be working pretty good across most things. So when I was saying earlier about it's CSS is called, it's a cascading. In Webflow, we've got this unusual, so when it's cascading, it's meant to cascade down through the breakpoints and down through from the parent down. But in Webflow, we've got this unusual thing where it actually cascades from this middle breakpoint. And I find this very frustrating. We have these options here to build larger breakpoints, but I'll just actually, I don't normally like using these breakpoints, but I'll show you what the issue is here. So if we were developing traditionally, we would start at the highest breakpoint, and we would manipulate the style from here, and we would say that we want this to be 4 rem, and we want it to be blue. And we would expect that those two properties, that those two style updates would cascade down through the different breakpoints. But in Webflow, it doesn't. We're cascading down from this base breakpoint and cascading up from this base breakpoint. So I don't know if anybody else has had this mistake before, but I have built out something and done huge amount of design and development in this breakpoint or another breakpoint, and realized that I've wasted an hour or half an hour. So that is definitely
People are nodding in the chat. They're like, yep,
okay.
Pretty frustrating. Yep, sure, I made that mistake too.
Yeah, so it's really frustrating, and it's one of the reasons why I actually don't use these options. The way I would, I tend to use like a fluid responsive option. We can probably talk about that in later classes to make up for this issue. So yeah, so that's probably the biggest difference in the CSS between if I was using VS Code or using Webflow, is that it cascades from like a center point, higher and lower, whereas in when you're using more traditional development tool, it cascades from the highest breakpoint down, and they would use containers to make sure that what we're building stays centered. So okay, so I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there about class, but we've got our H1 here, and over here we have all these really amazing pre-built elements that Webflow has provided us. Now, the one that I use pretty much all the time is the div block. There's all these other options in here. We've got, our flex, our sections, our containers. Actually, this is what I'll do. I'm going to talk about why I use the div block and not other options like we have here in Webflow, and it'll explain a bit of the CSS issues, or CSS, not issues, they're kind of like uniquenesses to Webflow. So we've got this div block here, and I'm going to make a section. So we'll leave this, we'll go down here, and I will delete this. And I'm going to make a section. So the way I work with Webflow is I use Command E, and Command E opens up this Finder. And what that does is it allows me search through these different elements that we have over here. So I'm going to find myself a div. I'm going to find myself a div, yeah. And I'm going to add this div to underneath this section, and I'm going to create a section. So this div block, I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to call it a section. Now, this has nothing in it, but just for visual effect, I'm going to give it a height of 100 VH. So what 100 VH is, the min height of 100 VH is VH stands for viewport height. So for this purpose, we're just going to make this section 100 VH. I might give it a bit of a background color just so that we can see what's going on. Now, inside here, I'm going to add another div, and I'm going to give this a class of container. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create we're trying to use these classes to separate out the site into nice sections, nice components, so that things are nice and easy to I'm trying to center.
Sorry, guys, I have accidentally shut the gather, but I'll be back there soon. That's my fault for trying to do too many things at once. But yeah, let me know in the chat. Are you all familiar with HTML and CSS? All these kind of foundations that we're showing right now, do you use them already? Let me know. Let me just share my screen again.
Now, when we're using Webflow, we got these pretty cool tools here and on the side. But so this is how I would build things out. I would use a div, I would turn it into a section and then a container. The thing with this section is that I'm going to just publish this, is that it actually isn't a section just yet. It's a div that's been given a class of section. So what does that mean? If you can see here, we've got our blue or green. And if everyone can see here, we've got a div that has got a class of section. Now, in order for this to be semantically correct, we need to go over here to this area and go to our tag and change that to section. So now not only is it a div with a section, it's actually a section tag with a section. And this allows us to separate out our content. And inside a section, when there's screen readers or Google is like looking for things, it's going to look for a section and then it's going to look for content within that section. So the thing, when we're using like a Webflow element, we've got these nice pre-built structures here as well. So I'm just going to show the difference between them and a few issues that I have, or the reasons why I don't use these options, because they're good in one sense, but there's a few things that people will notice that they just can cause some frustrations. So I'm going to put this section down here, and I'm going to give this a class of section Webflow, just to separate the differences between the two, what we got, and I'm going to give it a color of blue. So you can see here that we've got two classes, section and section Webflow. Now I'm going to add in a container into this section, and you can see it's already centered. And I'm going to give this class of container Webflow. And I'm going to give that just a color of white, just so that we can see it. And then we will put this. Sorry, I'm going a bit fast here centering this, but we're just going to set this up so that we can have. And we will give it a height. Yeah, just so we can see what's going on here. So now, the Webflow section and container have got pre-built CSS styles in it. And I'll just show you an example of how you can see here that we've got this class container Webflow. I'm going to put in a div underneath this. And this is going to, we're going to notice something here now. When I add in our class container Webflow, it's not going to work essentially. So what's after happening here? So I'm going to give this a bit of padding just so that we can separate things out. Webflow, we're using the Webflow section and the Webflow container, and we've created a class called container Webflow, and here it works perfectly, and here it's not working. So I'm going to publish, and we're just going to go through and we're going to inspect this again and just see what's actually going on. Like this isn't what one should expect if we've created our class. But when I look and inspect this container, we've got, if you can see it here, we've got all these other little CSS classes that I didn't make. We've got W layout block container and W container. So when I go down here and I look, I can see W layout block container has got a max width of 728, and that's because the screen has gotten a bit smaller. And now it's got a max width of 940 pixels. It's also got a margin left and a margin right of auto. And now these things here, when I inspect the little div that I made, I've just got container Webflow, and we've got all this missing. We've none of that other CSS properties. So why am I showing this? It's what I'm trying to convey here is that when one is developing on a like VS Code, or traditionally, what one would have done there is they would have created container Webflow, and they would have added in the max width, which you can see here. There is already a max width hidden in here, and that is taken from the default styles. And the default styles are similar when we come up here to what we would have seen with this H1. But with the default styles, we can't manipulate them in the same way as we can with the semantic tags. So I see this quite often, where sometimes people they think they're building something out in the right way, and then it stops working for some reason. And usually those reasons is because there's, in each of these elements, there is hidden Webflow CSS in pretty much every one of these elements. There is something that is probably a W, like in label, it's probably W label. In form block, it's W form block. And that piece of CSS can it can be manipulated through custom code, but it can also cause a bit of frustration. So as I was saying, if we were to build this out using a traditional development tool, we would have added in our max width, and I'm going to put in 75 REM.
We can cover we can have another winter boot camp about percentages and REM and all that, because I still need someone to teach me REM.
Okay, sorry, I completely jumped ahead there. I'll keep sticking.
No, it's fine. It's just me.
So, and if you can see what I'm doing here, so I typed in 120 divided by 60. So that should be it's the exact same as 120 pixels. Excuse me, I'm just used to using REM.
No, please do use best practice. I'm just behind in life.
Divide a pixel by 16 and you get a rem.
Yes, now I remember.
I'll just go into it quite while we're here. So this heading is, I think we have it down as 2 REM, right? So what that is doing, the class heading is taking, it is calculating 2 multiplied by 16 pixels. Or sorry, no, I'm doing that wrong. So yes, that's what it is doing. It is doing
16 times 2, isn't it?
16 pixels equal to 32. So where is it taking? So the 2 REM is multiplying by 16 and producing 16 pixels. So where is it getting this 16 from? If we're on our heading here, and we go all the way to our body is set up at 1 REM, and that's where it's taken from the 16 pixels. So the 16 is the standard, and a rem calculates from the highest parent, which is the body, and it then calculates out its size. There is another component, another one called EMs, and that just takes from the nearest parent. But yeah, so that's what rem does. So if we
yes, and Andrea just shared a really nice resource in the chat, and I've also shared it in the other chat, pixelsconverter.com, pixels to REM. So yeah, that's really useful. And also, Ailin, I had a question here in the chat from Arjita. So when the tag is changed from div to section in the navigation bar, the name gets changed to section 2. Then why not use section directly and not div? Could you please cover the above doubt? And I know there's some some people have already answered in the chat, but I would like for you to kind of explain why using div rather than section straight away.
Instead of using the Webflow section?
Yeah.
Okay. The main reason for me is that we have a Webflow section here. If I try and put in another section into the Webflow section, I'm not able to do that. So let's say that I'm building this out. I've got my section, but I want to turn this now. I'm like, I don't want it to be a section anymore. I actually just want this to be a wrapper. And the wrapper is going to just have this. I'm just going to put in all sorts of padding here. The wrapper. And now I want to add a element around it, and we're going to call that section. So the wrapper is in there. Okay, so that was quick and easy for me to do. I need to go in here, make sure that that goes back to a div, and I change this then to a section. I'm going to try and do the exact same thing now with this section. So I'm going to change this to wrapper with the class of wrapper, and I'm going to press Control and then look at these options, and I'm going to wrap. Well, I will be able to wrap it in a div, but what I want to do is I'm going to try and put this into a section. So I'm going to put a section. It's not letting me put the section into the section, so I'm going to try and put a section down here, and I'm going to try and add my wrapper into my section. And you can see here that Webflow isn't allowing me to do that. Now, that's for me this is just a really simple case, and obviously there's the way one would fix this is, okay, we just change this to section, and then we would put a div inside, and we would call that div wrapper. And we're doing exactly what we wanted to do. But for me, that I understand the reason why Webflow have done this is to ensure that we don't have section tags within section tags. But for me, it's just it's an unnecessary inconvenience. And also, the section tag is a relatively new. These up until I think about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, the section tag was actually just a div. So when we publish it here, it's the same thing as before. That if we scroll down. Well, I'm getting confused with my sections here now. But if I inspect this, you can see there's this little piece of a little bit of CSS, WF section, and that's you know, I believe what this is doing is it's taking, there's a bit of JavaScript that's targeting it, that's preventing the section going into another section. So that would be the main reason why I don't use it.
Yeah, I think that works. Awesome.
Yeah, actually, that was what I was planning on doing next. Wasn't really talking about section. Well, yeah, it was to kind of show those little issues that I would have with using Webflow. But
yeah, and Maria is also adding just by saying basically you can't nest HTML tag sections. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I suppose I've kind of rabbited on there for maybe 25 minutes, so I don't know if there's any questions, and we can probably try and let the floor kind of direct where we're going.
Perfect. Yeah, for sure. Let's open up the floor. And I was also telling, people that are watching us as well that, we're covering the basics today just to get warmed up with this topic. And then obviously we have 3 more events to kind of really get into the weeds of HTML and CSS. But I'm sure we will have some questions already here. People in the chat are talking about a potato extension for Webflow.
Oh,
What
yeah,
does it
yeah.
do? You put value in pixels in Webflow, press space, and it divides the value by 16 and set the units as REM. Very easy and helpful. Thank you, Irina. Lots of great resources always shared here at Floxies. But yeah, I do have some questions actually from the form, and then people here in the gather, feel free as per usual to put your hands up and I'll come and pick you and your question. So starting from our form, we do have a question here from Penny. What is the trickiest part of CSS that beginners need to understand? Really good question.
The trickiest part of CSS is is coming from a designer's point of view. The trickiest part is understanding that if we use a heading tag and continue to use it, that especially with Webflow, okay, what I'll do is I'll give the example of, we've got our heading here. Now we have got, I'm going to make, so this is our heading and we've got our heading one. We'll call it hero heading. Now we're going to go down here and I'm just going to duplicate this. And if I'm building out, I'm going to add in a heading. And then I'm just going to add in just an image, just for the crack, underneath here. Now, I'm going to change this to a heading 2 because we should only have one heading. We can talk about that. We'll do a whole class on typography. But I want to make this red again. So the trickiest thing from a design to development point of view is, oh, I've made this red. Let's make this red as well. So I go down here and I just make this red. Great. Now, we've got this really nice heading. We're going to call it, and it's red and it's working properly. So now I'm going to copy and paste my section and I'm going to do this. Delete this, and we're just going to put in, I'm going to make this image. I want it to be, let's say, 340 pixels wide and 340 pixels high. Okay, so now we've got an image and we've got a heading, and I'm going to give this, we got these border down here, we're going to give it 5 pixels border. Just for fun. Work, image, nope. There we go. And because we want things to be covered, I'm just going to make this covered. All right. So I'm going to go down here and we're in here. And now I'm going to put in another heading. And we're going to have another heading too. And I'm going to make this heading red. Oh, that was the background. And we're going to put an image underneath. And we're going to do the exact same thing. I want it to be 340. And we're going to give it the same. Yeah, we had this, didn't we? And we're going to make it a cover. So this is the thing that I find I see the most often is that we have got what we're after doing here is we have styled this perfectly according to the design that we've probably been given or the design that we have in our mind. But what we're after doing here is we're after generating these new pieces of new CSS class because we added a style, color red, to the heading, and now we've got a heading 3, and we've got heading 2. We also got heading. So, and we've got image and image 2. But these things are doing the exact same thing. So I'm going to make this, so what we've got, heading 1, it's meant to be 2, make this, I'll just make this back to 3. and we'll get rid of that. So these things are doing pretty much the exact same thing. There we go. This is capitalized because I typed it in as caps. They're all doing the exact same thing, but we've got three different styles doing the exact same function. So this, and then we've got two styles here doing the exact same function. So that's the, I suppose, the one thing we should all look out for is to make sure that what we're trying, when I'm developing, I'm trying to do things as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. Now, having all these different classes, it looks good right now, but let's say your client doesn't like the color red and they want everything to be blue. You're going to have to go into this heading and change it to blue. You're going to have to go into this heading and change it to blue. And that's just, and they want a blue border, a red border radius. Now, that's a waste of time, quite frankly. But if we undo all this stuff, if we just use the one heading tag, so I'm going to change all these to heading. And then I'm going to change this image. So we see we've got a class of image2 back to image. And from here, I'm going to change this color to blue. And I'm going to change these border radius here to green. And you can see that it's happened across all of everything that has got the exact same CSS class. So I suppose, did that answer that question?
So yeah, the question was, what is the trickiest part of CSS? What would you say the answer is now in one-liner after your explanation here?
The trickiest part of CSS is, if you're coming from a design background, is understanding that it is across it goes across the whole website. You don't have to do it one individual times. You don't have to change things individually.
Nice. I hope that helps. Yeah, Penny asked that question. And then we have a question from Ikra. Let me see. We often forget the HTML and CSS code lines. What are the best ways to remember them?
Say the code lines.
I guess she means like when you're writing HTML and CSS as a code. Do you have best practice on how to remember those lines?
Or what we're actually
Google. So, Maria says Google.
Are we talking about the class naming system?
Or ChatGPT even? Yeah, like the syntax probably. Yeah.
Okay, so the best way, so going through basics of class, what is a class and how to use it, I suppose.
Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna get in another question from Peter. What is best practice when adding custom HTML and CSS in Webflow?
Ooh, I suppose there's two answers to that. If you want to, okay, well, I'll give an example. If you want to see it, you should. So we're in the world of visual designers. So if we add in, I'm going to put in a custom embed. I'm going to type in H1 tag and heading embed.
And by the way, people are reacting positively to the client first suggestion. Like, so if you want to have an event where you just show us how to use client first, because I can see here in the chat, that would be great. I heard the client first, but I don't know how to use it.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to go straight into client first today. I just wanted to touch on like the real basic fundamentals of it. But yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we'll do that. So perhaps the next couple of sessions I'll go more deep, start touching on client first, and we'll have a full understanding by the end of it. So okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find this piece of CSS. And hope I'm moving a bit fast here now, but if we were to use a custom embed, and let's say we're trying to change the style of something, and we want to be able to see it, we need to put it in. If I want to be able to see what I'm doing, I always use the custom embeds that are on Webflow. And the reason for that is if we don't use this custom embed, it has to render. We have to publish the website essentially in order to get what we want. So when we put this in here, okay, so I went kind of fast there. But what I did is I've taken this CSS just because we were working with it earlier on. And I have created this custom embed and just added in the style and added it to this H1 heading called heading red. Now, this will work across all of these. So if I change this here to heading red, it works. So if you want to see what you're doing, I would recommend having an embed right up here at the top. And you can see here, now this is a part of client first, that there's this embed component here called global styles. And there's all this really cool, fun CSS inside there. And I can go through a lot of this stuff and explain it in future classes. But if you want to see what you're doing, put it on, have it as a global style, and because we're in the game of visual development, so we want to see what we're doing. If we take this off and we put it into put it as a before the body tag as a global tag, where it's, especially if it's JavaScript, we're not going to see it essentially. Even if it is, we're not going to see the CSS. So I would say CSS styles, keep them on the page. If you're doing, if you are using custom JavaScript, then I would add it to the page settings in the custom code down here. And then if you're getting really complex, potentially using GitHub, but we don't, but that would be the way that I would do.
Ailin, keep it functional.
Okay, so so JavaScript, use it as globals, CSS embedded onto the page.
Awesome. And I can see people in the chat are talking about Reloom, Mast, client first. We could probably have also a session where we compare all these frameworks and just like showcase what they are, because obviously some people they might have heard of them, they might have not have tried them, or you don't even know, which one. I wouldn't say like there's a best one, because it really depends at the end of the day on your style and like what you prefer and what makes it easier for you to build at the end of the day, because they're all very valuable frameworks. Reloom, client first, Mast, and I don't know if you have a different opinion there, Ailin, but yeah, for me personally, I think it just like is down to what really helps you develop better and cleaner. So what do you think?
I don't think it really matters, provided that you follow a clean structure and you follow the rules of that particular framework. So I've just started exploring Mast. It is more global. So I'll just give an example. So like a global CSS would be something like heading, and then a custom one would be something like, I'm going to just copy this, and we're going to create a new class, and I will call this home heading. And so a global class would be something like heading. A custom class that would be specific would be something like home heading. So this is saying that it's specific to the home. So Mast is going along the more global approach, whereas client first is the custom CSS custom styling approach. Like that's very, I'm being very broad there in my description of the two of them. And both of them have benefits and have negatives. But the best thing about client first is that it has standardized CSS in Webflow, which is great for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. There's a really great question here. They're like from Ali. Let me just put it in the chat. Any advice on how to think in HTML and CSS? For example, any thought processes that can help you develop ideas and solutions?
Yeah, so when you are, I'll do an example again. So when you're building, always think of building from the body first. So I'm going to be quite general here. Designers think from sometimes designers would think from the child all the way back to the like from the front of the canvas to the back of the canvas. As a developer, you should think from the back of the HTML right down to the front. So you can see here, and then this is the client first structure, that we've got a page wrapper with a main wrapper, a home section, padding, and container, and it keeps cascading down through the different HTML elements. So what I would do is think from the back. So if you got a design, think of the background color first. So let's do something, a real simple example. If I put in a div, I'll go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call it hero section. And I'm going to give it a height of 100. No, I'm going to call it background. Video section. Just imagine that we've got a design that's got a background video in it. Where we have to go in here. Change that to viewport height. And I'm just going to change this to black. All right, just so we can see it. So now I've got a section and I want to put a background video. So I would think of the background video first, and we would find the background video element. And I'm not going to put in a video into it right now, but we'll just change this to like a gray color, and we'll give it a bit of opacity, just so that it's kind of see-through. And we can see there's an auto class given to it here, but I'm just going to call it video and give it a height of 100% and a width of 100%. So the way I would build is I would build the section first, then the background video, and now we're going to have to put we're going to put text on top of that. So maybe I would put in another div, and we would call it section body for and we'll just center everything, give it a background color of whites just so that we can see the difference. I'm going a bit fast here, but we're going to have to make this relative and then this absolute. And then I'm going to put in my I don't need to export that. And put in my heading. And I know the section body here is, so let's just make that. So that would be the way, in a really quick example. If you can see down here, we've got our, I'll close all these guys and open up that last one. We've got our background video section. So I would start thinking, I've already built out my page wrapper, my main wrapper. I'm now building my section. And the first thing that I would be thinking that's at the back of the section is the background video. And then I would be adding content on top of that. And when you do it this way, this is the best way to make sure that things are in the right order. They're read correctly by Google, and that you don't end up with a random background video in front of things.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Awesome. Let's see, community here. Do we have any burning questions for Ailin before we wrap up? And actually, before that, Ailin, we did have a question. If you were to give us 3 key takeaways out of today's session, what would they be?
Understand that there is hidden CSS in Webflow. If you can learn the hidden CSS that's in here, in all of these things, it will make life, there will be problems that you will come across that you'll be able to figure out. So that would be the first thing, is recognize that there is hidden CSS that can be manipulated in each of these elements. The second one is, remember that Webflow cascades from the center base breakpoint, higher and lower. And then the third one would be to not replicate your classes the way I did with these guys. Yeah, well, no, they're the same, but with heading 2.
Clean naming convention. Awesome. Well then, and in terms of next, for our next Wonder Wednesday, which will not be on the 12th, because we're, we won't have you on the 12th. We're gonna just meet amongst ourselves and probably just discuss, how everyone's doing, just catching up and checking in onto the community. But what can we expect from our second lesson on HTML and CSS?
I was going to go more as I was going to start talking about client. It was going to be client first, but it would be it was more. It was going to be a broader discussion about naming systems. So yeah, we can have an introduction to client first.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure people would like that. And girls, I highly encourage you to just keep dropping your questions. Like, you have the Luma form, so drop your questions there, or tell me on Discord, where we just chat there every day. So just tell me if you have any more questions or topics that you would like to explore a bit more. I know that we have somebody here who's fairly new. Arjita, hi, I saw your question about networking. I think you're in the best position and place ever, because you're now in a community with over 1,000 women and Webflow developers around you. So don't you worry about networking. We're here for you. And yeah, if you wanted to also practice your Webflow skills and everything that you're learning, bear in mind that we're also offering our Webflow workouts events, which are bite-sized lessons hosted by our mentors, Felicity and Elsa. So I'm going to drop a link here for you. But yeah, apart from that, Ailin, thank you so much for being our very first summer camp tutor, speaker / mentor expert. I hope you enjoyed hosting this session here with us today. I'm very grateful.
That's great. Thanks.
We were just saying, how important it is, and so it's good that we dedicate a couple events to this topic. So thank you again for giving us your time and expertise today.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And so then I will see you on what's the next Wednesday that we're going to see
you? The 17th.
The 17th of July. Awesome. All right, then. Well, everyone, take care and have a fantastic day, night ahead. All right.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.